Hello everybody and welcome to the #1 MMA betting show in the world. In today's video, we will be taking a deep dive into all of the fights taking place this weekend from a betting perspective, and hopefully you'll be able to use the information in this video to either make some extra cash this weekend or save you from placing some bad bets. But before we get into talking about these fights, I also want to apologize for this video coming out a little bit later than usual. I'd planned to put this YouTube video out about 2 days ago, but a couple of days ago, many of you will know, I was doing a live stream on the match between Borussia Dortmund and Bayern Munich, and for absolutely no reason during that live stream, YouTube shut the live stream down. And then I received an email saying I was going to be banned from uploading or doing any live streams for 7 days. So I hadn't planned to put out a YouTube video this week because of the restrictions imposed on my account. And you can see here on my Twitter account, this was the email that I basically had from YouTube saying, you've been really naughty, you've done something wrong, you violated our community guidelines, and if you do it again, well, not only will we stop you from uploading for a week, it'll be 2 weeks. If you do it again, we'll permanently ban you. I had absolutely no idea what I'd done wrong, guys. I didn't personally feel that I had violated the YouTube community guidelines in any way. So I did appeal their decision, and we actually won the appeal, boys. And about just over 24 hours later, they sent me an email saying I won the appeal, and my account was back in good standing. I was free to upload again, but this did set me back a little bit because when I received this, obviously I planned my workload out for the week and I planned to do a YouTube video this week, and when I got this email, I kind of just cleared the time in my schedule that I was setting aside to do this YouTube video, and I worked on other stuff so that when my account did when I did win the appeal, I had to finish off that other stuff before I could get to planning out this YouTube video, because it's quite a long process to put these YouTube videos together for you boys. So yeah, that's why this one's a bit late. I am really sorry, boys. I had planned to get out a couple of days ago, but YouTube did throw a little bit of a spanner in the works. But it's all good, man. We won the appeal. No harm done. And usually around about this time in the video, I would be saying, please hit the like button for me. If we get a certain number of likes, I will do a live stream on fight day where I try and find some decent value prop bets for all the fights taking place this weekend. But you know what, boys? I have already taken a look at the props for this weekend, and it's just not a very good card for betting in general. It's not a good card for pre-fight betting at all, and that includes prop bets. So I really don't want to waste your time by doing a prop bet live stream this weekend, because there's a few props that are okay, but it's very unlikely you'll be able to make a profit this weekend from betting my props, so I'd rather just not go there. But if you could hit the like button for me anyway, I would really appreciate it. And hopefully next week's card, UFC 250, will be better for betting, and I'll be able to do a prop bet live stream for that one instead. And that does bring me on to a point that I want to get out of the way very early on in this video. This is a really bad card for betting, guys. Currently don't have any bets, and I want to let you know that up front, so that you can click off, you can go watch Joe Rogan or something else instead of wasting your time watching this video. Things are going really well for me at the moment, boys. I've been on a bad run towards the end of last year on pre-fight bets, and I've really started to turn things around, made a profit on 4 of the last 5 events. I've also done great on live betting, and I'm very happy with how everything is going on the betting front at the moment. So on an event like this, where there are just no strong positions to put my money, I'm not going to force bets and place bets I don't absolutely love. I'm just going to chill. We've got plenty of fights coming up. We've got literally an event every single weekend over the next 5 weeks. So unless I really see a strong position to put my money, I'm not going to be placing any bets. So far, I am passing on this card, and I don't see that changing. But obviously, as ever, I have researched every single one of these fights in depth to try and find those strong positions, and while I haven't found them, I will be sharing all my research for these fights with you in this video. So please show some appreciation, hit that like button. I will of course be live betting this card. Every single card is great for live betting. I'm looking forward to live betting this one. If you would like to live bet this event with me, you can now come over to my website, buy a live betting pass for this event, and join us. Come on board. I think you're really going to enjoy it, so you might want to try that out. And also, as soon as I finish recording this video, I'm going to be jumping right into the UFC 250 fight research. So if you are interested in learning how to research fights for yourself, if you want to join a group of people that all research fights together, come on over to my website, sign up, and jump into these group research sessions. As you can see, we did a 3-hour-long research session on Augusto Sakai versus Blagoy Ivanov, which you can see here. This is the last one we'll do, and obviously I'll be summarizing my my findings for you later on. If we go to the live stream archive, click into this event, you can see that literally for every single event there's hours and hours and hours of content that we put out every single week to try and hunt for those strong positions, to make money betting on MMA, man, to hopefully earn some good cash, right? So if you're interested in that, jump on board, boys. And I think that is just about everything that I wanted to talk about. Yeah, I think it is. So let's get into the very first fight. Actually, before I do, there is one more thing that I need to talk to you about. Obviously, at the beginning of every one of these videos, I like to do kind of like a macro overview of any X factors which could impact the fights taking place this weekend. And of course, you know, we've spoken about how the coronavirus is going to be disrupting training camps. But to be honest with you, most fighters have looked pretty fucking good, to be honest. Some fighters have even looked better than ever. So the coronavirus doesn't actually appear to be having much of an impact on fighters' performances at all, if the last 3 or 4 events are anything to go by. But one additional X factor to take into consideration this week is obviously the fact that they're using a smaller octagon for this card, and all the upcoming cards with these fights taking place in a smaller venue, the UFC Apex Arena. So big shout out to John Morgan of MMA Junkie for sharing this information. I really appreciate John going out of his way to find out this information and share it with people. Give him a follow, give him a like, all that good stuff, boys, to show your appreciation. Leave him a nice comment as well, man. Hey, leave me a nice comment, right? Let's share some positivity. I left John a nice comment here. Bit of positivity, but this does change things. When you have a smaller octagon, statistically, fights are more likely to end inside the distance than in a big octagon, because the smaller space kind of forces people to engage more. But certain stylistic matchups will not really be affected in any way at all by the smaller octagon, whereas some stylistic matchups will be. So throughout this, throughout this video, when we take a deep dive into every single one of these fights, I'm going to be giving my thoughts on whether I personally feel the smaller cage will have an impact on that matchup or whether it won't. So remember, boys, before you go any further, I don't have any bets on this card. I think it's a really bad card for betting, actually. So you don't have to watch. Go away. Go watch something else if you want to. But if you are interested in how I see each of these fights playing out this weekend, stay around, because we're going to share some interesting stuff, drop some major knowledge on these fights. Okay, so the first one that I want to get into is going to be Chris Gutierrez against Vince Morales. One of several fights on this card where both guys are roughly around even money, which is usually the perfect storm for, you know, a fight being very, very good for betting when you've got both guys around even money. If you can, like, you know, slightly lean 60-40 one way or the other, you can often find some strong positions to put your cash. But like I say, this card, not so much. This is a very, very difficult card for betting. So at the moment, we've got Gutierrez and Morales currently around about odds of 1.90, which is minus 110 for an implied probability of 53%. So in order to bet either of these guys, kind of got to give them a better than 53% chance of winning. The bookies are currently viewing this fight at around 50-50. So both these guys are strikers. This should be a predominantly stand-up fight, but both guys have got very, very different styles of fighting. Vince Morales, a very, very traditional boxing style of striking, whereas Chris Gutierrez, much more of a kicks-based counter-striking style of fighting. And with both these guys primarily being strikers, neither of them ever really looks to take the fight to the ground. So I do see this being a stand-up fight. If it did go to the ground, both guys are reasonably good at defending themselves, but I don't see that happening. I really see this being a stand-up fight. Kicker versus boxer. So the one thing that really stands out about both these guys when you start to research their past fights is that they're both excellent defensively. I mean, in particular, Chris Gutierrez, he does an absolutely fantastic job of just staying just outside of his opponent's range. And as they come forward, he just slips back a little bit further outside their range so that their shots are always falling short. And even if they do manage to land on him, they only tend to be catching him with the tip of their shots. So his striking defense is absolutely fantastic. He's really elusive, difficult to catch. And the one thing that I love about Chris Gutierrez's style is that he's incredibly disciplined. He does a great job of sticking to a game plan. When a counter-striker gets pressured and they continue to get pressured, there's often like this instinct where they've got to deter their opponent from continuing to pressuring them. So to do that, you'll often see them plant their feet and kind of like fire back and get into like a big exchange, which can obviously lead to you taking big damage, getting knocked out. Chris Gutierrez doesn't that. He's incredibly disciplined. No matter how much pressure his opponent puts on him, he just continues to stick to his counter-striking style and will circle away from his opponent for however long he needs to find space in the octagon. He loves to continue circling away and get the fight right back to the center of the cage in kickboxing range where he's at his best. Now, that is significant though, because this is one of those fights where the small octagon will play a big part, because Chris Gutierrez is very much one of these guys that likes to stay just outside of his opponent's range, chip away at them with kicks, and then as they come forward, he'll either slip backwards to just stay outside of their range so that he can land on them from a position where they can't land on him, and then if they continue to come forward, get a little bit more aggressive with their pressure, he will just circle away. Now, with this being a smaller octagon, there's less room for him to circle into, so it becomes much easier for Vince Morales to cut the cage off. So this is one of those fights that could be impacted in a really big way. Before before we found out about what size cage was being used, I leaned slightly towards Vince Morales for the reasons I'm going to explain in a moment. Slightly lean towards Morales, but I lean towards Morales even more now. The size of the cage makes life quite a bit more difficult for Gutierrez, because now if Morales comes forward and pressures him, Gutierrez doesn't have as much space to circle side to side, use our lateral movement, because obviously the cage is much smaller. It'll be easier for Morales to just cut those angles off. So the reason why I do lean towards Vince Morales in this fight is because in his fight against Aiemann Zahabi, he did show flashes of being able to sustain pressure, and that is the kind of style that will cause Chris Gutierrez a problem, because Chris Gutierrez is primarily a kicker. Gutierrez's boxing isn't very good at all, but Gutierrez's kicks are very good. But the problem with that style is, if you're a boxer and you apply a lot of pressure to that style, Gutierrez needs time and space to get his kicks off. If you continue to pressure him and you don't give him that time and space, you can outstrike him by quite a wide margin, because he's never in a position where he's got the time and the space to uncork his kicks. And because of that, this is a good stylistic matchup for Morales, based on his performance against Aiemann Zahabi, where he did keep up the pressure for 15 minutes, and Zahabi really struggled under that pressure. The problem with Morales is, and the reason why I don't want to bet Morales here, is because we've seen two very different sides to him. In his fight against Aiemann Zahabi, like I say, high pressure style of fighting, decent boxing. That style of fighting is going to do very, very well against Chris Gutierrez, crowding him, not giving him the time and space to get his kicks off, and Morales using his nice sharp boxing to exploit the fact that Gutierrez doesn't really have boxing. My main concern, though, and the reason why I'm not betting him here, is he's currently around about even money, which means in order to bet him, you've got to give him a better than 53% chance of winning. And in his performance against Benito Lopez, we saw a completely different side of him, where he threw a really low volume of strikes. He struggled against Benito Lopez's kicking-based style, which is interesting because Chris Gutierrez is a much better kicker than Lopez. And Morales really didn't let his hands go in this fight. He threw quite a low volume of strikes and really did leave this fight in the hands of the judges. You know, in rounds 2 and 3, just didn't do enough to put his stamp on rounds. That's ultimately the reason why he lost that fight. So I can't bet Vince Morales in this fight because, to me, these two fights show that he's incredibly inconsistent. If we knew he was going to show up and perform like he did against Zahabi, I'd be all over him here. But his performance against Lopez makes me nervous. That's why I can't bet him at odds of around even money. Because if we look at the odds, currently around about 1.91, well, what that means is you're not even getting a 1-to-1 payout on your money. You're not even getting an even money payout. So if there's a 50-50 chance whether he shows up and fights like he did against Zahabi or Lopez, you're getting a really shit deal. You're getting a really bad risk-to-reward ratio on your cash, especially because Gutierrez is a much better kicker than Benito Lopez was. The way I look at this is, you know, it's 50-50 whether we're going to get the version of Morales that showed up against Zahabi or Lopez. So because you're only getting, you know, not even a 1-to-1 50-50 payout on your cash, it's a really poor risk to reward ratio and an easy pass for me, which you're going to be hearing a lot of in this video. I'm very sorry, that's the way I see it. I'm not going to be forcing bets. I love money, which is why I'm keeping it tight. One more thing that I would point out that I haven't mentioned is that Chris Gutierrez does have excellent leg kicks. He does a really good job of disguising them, hiding them very well. There's no setup, there's no telegraph. And we saw in Morales' last fight against Lopez that he is particularly susceptible to leg kicks. So that is a potential path to victory for Gutierrez, although you know what they say, the best counter to a leg kick is a punch in the face, and Morales is a much better boxer that can certainly punch Chris Gutierrez in the face. So that is one fight down, boys. We will now move on to the next one, which is going to be Kenney against Louis Smolka. Very interesting fight this. Since moving from Hawaii to California to train full-time with the likes of Marlon Vera, Alex Perez, Ricky Simone, Carla Esparza, we have seen Louis Smolka make big improvements, and he also looks a lot better now that he's moved up from flyweight to the bantamweight division. Looks much better in his second stint in the UFC, but Louis Smolka does find himself as one of the biggest underdogs on this card. If we take a look at the current odds, the average odds available on Kenney are around 1.37, which is minus 270 for an implied probability of 73%. And if we look at the odds on Louis Smolka, he's currently around about an average of 3.20, which is plus 220 for an implied probability of 31%. So one of the biggest underdogs on the card. And to be honest with you, when you research this fight, I can definitely see why Smolka is a big underdog here. This is a very difficult stylistic matchup for Smolka because his takedown defense is really bad, and Kenney is a very strong wrestler. Ultimately, this fight boils down to Kenney having the ability to dictate where this fight takes place, and that's what makes this a difficult matchup for Smolka and the reason why Kenney deserves to be the big favourite. Now, Louis Smolka does have a base in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's very crafty on the ground. He's very slick on the ground. He's got a nasty submission game. And while he could catch Kenney in something crazy on the ground, we do have to remember that Kenney did get involved in really competitive grappling matches against Rayborg, Manny Bermudez, and Merab Dvalishvili, who are all very skilled submission grapplers themselves. And to be fair, Kenney wasn't really in too much danger against any of those guys. So while Smolka is a very skilled submission grappler, if Borg, Bermudez, and Dvalishvili couldn't submit him, the probability of Smolka submitting him is pretty fucking low, to be fair to you. Even though I am quite impressed with Smolka's ground game, but Casey is just a very strong grappler, strong wrestler, skilled submission grappler himself. And one interesting thing about Casey is when he starts to get tired, he becomes very sloppy when it comes to striking, but he's actually still quite an effective grappler. So no matter how tired he gets in this fight, chances are he can still handle himself on the ground. And Louis Smolka, just not the best off his back, a little bit too easy to take down. And if Kenney comes into this fight in shape, he should be able to take Smolka down, wet blanket him, control him quite easily, and dominate this fight. Now, when it comes to striking, this fight gets a little bit more interesting. Oh, are we blurry here? Are we blurry? Do this need to come into focus, do you think? I can't tell if this is out of focus or not. Anyway, we'll keep it rolling. We'll keep it rolling, boys. I can't tell if we're in focus. Anyway, Smolka. When it comes to striking, this fight is a little bit more interesting because Casey is very much a single shot striker, whereas Smolka is kind of like a Hawaiian Diaz, where he very, very high volume of striking, but just like the Diaz brothers, has really poor striking defense, but he doesn't mind. It's kind of like the price he pays for his high volume, high pressure style, where he walks his opponent down, gets in their face, and boxes them up. Smolka is a very good offensive boxer, very, very bad defensively, but he's a tough Hawaiian, mixes his shots up nicely, goes with the body, and he's a bit of a nightmare standing, to be honest with you. So while Kenney possesses more of that one shot, that one shot power that can really hurt Smolka, Smolka is more likely to overwhelm him with volume. So the reason why I'm going to pass on this fight is because stylistically, it's a very, very good fight for Kenney. He's a much, much stronger grappler. He could dictate where the fight takes place, but Kenney does also have a habit of slowing down as the fight goes on. And Smolka pushes such a crazy pace, particularly standing, that it is possible that with Kenney coming in, taking this fight on short notice, possibly not training properly at the moment due to the coronavirus, there is a good chance that he comes in out of shape and Smolka just forces him to fight at a pace that Kenney doesn't have the gas tank for. We see Kenney fade and Smolka starts to take over. I wouldn't bet on that personally, because if we look at the odds on Smolka, an implied probability of 31%, I'd want to be giving Smolka at least a 40% chance of winning here to roll the dice on him. And I just can't do that because ultimately Casey is a really strong grappler. He can dictate where this fight takes place and he can out-wrestle Smolka and probably survive standing. So this one's an easy pass for me. Definitely wouldn't be betting Kenney as a big favourite because he does have a tendency to slow down. I'm not seeing enough from Smolka either to roll the dice on him though. We now move on to the next fight. And this is definitely a little blurry, right? I can't even work it out, boys. Can't work it out. Anyway, we'll keep soldiering on. Anyway, we will get into the next fight, which is going to be Brandon Royval against Tim Elliott. Now, obviously, I don't have any bets for this card, but there are certain fighters who have really tempted me. And Tim Elliott is one of those guys. I have been very, very tempted to bet Tim Elliott this weekend, and his odds are improving slowly, which is making him even more tempting. So if we look at the odds on this fight then, so Tim Elliott currently around about an average of, call it 1.61, which is minus 164 for an implied probability of 62%. So to bet Elliott here, got to give him a better than 62% chance of winning. And if we look at the odds on Brandon Royval, currently around about an average of 2.45, which is plus 145. Plus 145 for an implied probability of 41%. So in order to bet on Royval here, you've got to give him a better than 41% chance of winning. Bookies are capping this roughly 60-40 in Elliott's favour. So Royval is, well, everyone on this card is stepping up to take it on short notice. But Royval also making his UFC debut, although he was already training for a fight in June against Jerome Rivera on the Contender Series, and he has actually referenced this on his social media profiles, alluding to the fact that he was already in shape. So both these guys have a good relationship with James Krause, so he will not be cornering either of these boys this weekend. And this is a very tough fight for Brandon Royval. But rather than me trying to explain the reasons why it's a bad fight, I will just show you. And again, boys, I will reiterate, if you are interested in learning more about this kind of stuff, researching these fights with us, don't forget, I live stream my research for every single fight on every single Bellator and UFC card. Sign up to my website, boys. Cheap as chips. Fucking 20 hours of content I pump out every week, so that if you don't want to wait for these breakdown videos to come out on YouTube, you can already find out how I'm seeing these fights and even research them with me together in these live research sessions. Get on board, boys. It's good stuff. But when we were researching this fight between Royval and Tim Elliott, it became very, very apparent very early on that Royval had some big weaknesses that could potentially be exploited. So you're seeing it here already. Royval just has very, very bad striking defense, and he shows this literally in the first 10 seconds of this fight. Watch how he overcommits to the right hand, or he doesn't overcommit to anything. He just kind of walks into Casey Kenney's boxing range with his chin up high and exposed. Like here, this entry, hands down low, not moving his head. His feet are in a weird position. Could have walked right onto a huge right hand there from Kenney. Kenney doesn't make him pay, but then a few moments later, he does make him pay. Catches him big time with that left hand. So if you go back and watch any of Brandon Royval's fights, you will see that he has really, really bad striking defense, and we're seeing it here. Doesn't move his head, fights with his hands down low, doesn't see the shots coming, and he is definitely there to be hit. Now, that shouldn't make too much of a difference in this fight, because Tim Elliott doesn't really have any power in his hands, doesn't really have the striking to make Royval pay, and Elliott has pretty bad striking defense as well. I mean, out of the two guys, I would actually give Royval the advantage when it comes to striking, despite the fact that obviously his defense is very bad, and we see him, just a few moments ago, eat a big right hook here any second, I think. Have I gone back too far? I think it's any second now. Yeah, big right hook there. So Royval's striker defense is very, very, very bad. Elliott probably can't make him pay for it, but it's just something you should be aware of. But obviously, Elliott is primarily a grappler, and the other weakness that Royval has got here, if we just start to scrub through this footage, is that he does have very, very bad takedown defense. Now, Royval has good submission defense. I mean, this fight here was a 25-minute flyweight title fight against Casey Kenney, and we've already in the last breakdown spoke about how good Kenney is as a grappler, and this fight, again, he gets dropped there, bad striking defense, but you just see throughout the fight really bad takedown defense. We scrub through the footage, take a look at Servi's takedown defense. We're going to see it here. You'll just see that this guy, bad striker defense, bad takedown defense, but he is pretty good at defending himself on the ground. Like I say, he went a different distance with Casey Kenney. He can handle himself, man. He's got decent submission defense. You see there, he gives up a really weak takedown, and He is reasonably dangerous on the ground. Like, he's very, very offensive on the ground. He's always attacking off his back. He's got reasonably good cardio. We have seen Tim Elliott. Tim Elliott is prone to getting caught in submissions. So it is possible that Royval, might catch him in something on the ground. But there's absolutely no doubt about it that Tim Elliott is by far the better grappler. And that's why I do heavily lean towards Elliott in this fight. If the fight goes to the ground, Elliott's likely to just go to his crazy high intensity, high number of scrambles, and just really overwhelm Royval on the ground. Not many guys could keep up with the pace that Elliott sets on the ground, and it's a real difficult debut for Royval for the reasons that I've just mentioned. So, in terms of betting this fight, Elliott is a very, very tempting bet for me. I haven't ruled out not betting him. If his odds continue to improve, I will bet him. But the reason why I don't want to bet Elliott is just because we haven't seen a lot of Brandon Royval over the last sort of 2 years. These fights ended very quickly, and it's likely that in the last sort of 18 months, 2 years, training at a great gym like Factory X, at only 27 years old, Royval is going to be making big improvements from fight to fight. And, Kenney's a really tough opponent. It's one of those things where he's likely to have learned a lot from this performance, and he's likely to have got a lot better in the last 18 months. So we don't really know what we're getting from Royval this weekend. On top of that, another thing that I don't like is Tim Elliott seems to have fallen off the wagon a little bit since moving to train in Las Vegas. He's really, really inconsistent. You can see, I don't like the wiki cap, but his record of 15-10 does show that he is very, very inconsistent. He has lost to very, very, skilled opponents. But he is also one of these guys that's difficult to trust because he's just got really, really bad striking defense, and he's also prone to getting caught in bad positions on the ground. Another weakness of Elliott is that even though he's a strong grappler, he's not a very good wrestler in the sense that he doesn't have very good traditional single leg, double leg takedowns. Most of Elliott's takedowns come from weird trips and throws, which I'm not sure are going to be effective against Royval. Royval has bad takedown defense with traditional single legs and double legs, but I'm not too sure how Elliott's going to be able to get him to the ground with his weird trips and throws. So definitely heavily lean Elliott towards here, but like I say, he is prone to getting caught in subs. He is a little bit inconsistent. I do worry about how his personal issues are having an impact on his motivation and his training. So just not usually the kind of guy that I would like to bet at favourite odds, but this is definitely a good stylistic matchup for him, and I haven't ruled out betting him. I might still pull the trigger. So that is that one out the way, boys. Alright, we will get into the next one now. Which is going to be another one of the more interesting fights on the card. Klidson Abreu against Jamal Hill. And I just said that Tim Elliott was one of those fighters that I was very, very tempted to bet. And Jamal Hill is another fighter that I am very, very tempted to bet, which will probably surprise many of you listening to this, because it seems like everyone online is on Klidson Abreu here. But I do think this is a very, very, very potentially tough matchup for Abreu for all the reasons that I will outline in a moment. Before I get into it, boys, Jesus Christ, I need a drink. I am out of breath after all that talking. Alright, let's get into it then. Where do I start? So, if we look at the odds on this fight, currently both guys are very close to even money. We have got Hill at odds of around about an average of 1.80, which is minus 125 for an implied probability of 56%. And if we take a look at the odds on Abreu, currently around about an average of 2.0, which is plus 100 for an implied probability of 50%. So, where do I begin with this one? Because I want to show you guys a good amount of footage of both these fighters to try and illustrate my feelings on this matchup. And I only wish that I could use footage from their more recent fights in the UFC to illustrate this point more clearly. But that is why you should join my website and check out our live research sessions for these fights, where you can see these things for yourself firsthand alongside me while I'm researching them for the first time. So, this is a classic striker versus grappler matchup, with Klidson Abreu being the grappler and Jamal Hill being the striker. And it's fair to say, from what I've seen, both guys should have a pretty big advantage in their areas of expertise. So if it stays standing, Hill will have an enormous advantage. If it goes to the ground, Abreu will have an enormous advantage. So in terms of X factors on this one, Jamal Hill will have a pretty big size and reach advantage. He's 6'4" with a 79-inch reach. At Klidson Abreu, only 6'1" with a 74-inch reach. Very undersized for the light heavyweight division, which is of course the reason why he has previously competed at... How far do I have to scroll back to find this information? You'll just have to take my word for it that this guy has competed at middleweight at some point. Maybe he hasn't. Maybe I got that wrong. Anyway, boys, moving on. He's quite small. He is quite small. And Jamal Hill, absolutely massive for a light heavyweight. And Jamal Hill's not one of these guys that's like, you know, one of these lean, lanky, tall light heavyweights. He is very big. He is very athletic. He's got a strong core, good balance. He's just a very powerful dude. And one of the things that I really like about Jamal Hill is that he knows how to use his size. He does a great job of fighting long, peppers his opponent's legs and body with very nice kicks. He's got a nice long jab. One of the things I also love about Hill is that he sets his kicks up very nicely. He throws a leg kick or a body kick or a head kick in exactly the same way, which overloads his opponent with information and confuses them, because when they're defending against his strikes, they don't know whether a head kick is coming or an inside leg kick is coming. And that means they've always got to keep their hands up high in the event that he does throw a head kick, which always exposes their body and legs. And this is quite a big, important factor to take into consideration in this matchup, as Klidson Abreu is very susceptible to leg kicks, and he also tends to slow down as the fight goes on, which is great news for Hill, because Hill loves to work the bodies with powerful kicks and also dangerous body kicks. The one knock on Hill's striking is that he does exit exchanges with his chin up high and exposed, but because he fights so long, he's often able to get away with it. Abreu is quite a sloppy striker. He's going to really struggle to get inside on Hill with his reach differential. So it's unlikely Abreu is going to make Hill pay for leaving his chin up high and exposed on the exit from striker exchanges, because Abreu doesn't really get inside and land. So Hill should be alright with that, although it is a weakness that you might want to take into consideration moving forward when Hill starts to face a better level of striker, perhaps even a light heavyweight that is a similar size to Hill, as opposed to Abreu, who is on the smaller side. So Abreu has really low-level sloppy striking. Hill, fantastic striking. I think Hill's striking absolutely brilliant. He's also making massive improvements from fight to fight. I could show you this footage here to illustrate just a couple of the things that I want to talk about. But the one concerning thing about this is that this fight is from back in... when is this fight? This fight is from back in April 2018. And I could tell you right now, don't judge Hill's striking in this fight, because he has improved so much since this fight. It is unbelievable. The amount that Hill has improved in the last 2 years is quite staggering. So don't form too strong of an opinion on the striking that you're going to see here, because trust me, it is a hell of a lot better. It is a hell of a lot better. Okay. So, the reason why, let's get into the reason why I think this could be a really good fight for Hill. So, everyone is saying online that Jamal Hill has bad takedown defense, and I am not going to disagree with you, he does. But, the devil is always in the detail when it comes to betting on MMA, and the detail here is, Hill has good takedown defense technique, in the sense that when he is defending techniques, he knows exactly what to do. The only problem is that he's a little bit slow to react. So, for example, if his opponent shoots in on a really deep takedown entry, Hill knows that he needs to clear his legs and dig underhooks, but he might just do it a fraction of a second too late, which means that his opponent does actually end up completing the takedown. But he is getting better and better, and he is showing signs of starting to really demonstrate pretty solid takedown defense, in my opinion. The thing with Hill is, I'm trying to think how to word this. The thing with Hill is, Hill is one of these guys that tends to grow into the fight. So Hill has got amazing cardio. He doesn't slow down. So what you'll find with wrestlers is, a grappler's takedown entry from a guy like Abreu might be really sharp and explosive and well-timed early in a fight. And that will be the stage of the fight where you can catch a guy like Hill cold, where Hill hasn't had time to warm up, hasn't got your timing yet, hasn't managed to get a read on you yet, and he's a little bit slow to react to digging underhooks and clearing his legs so you can hit that takedown. But as the fight goes on, it's like most fighters, when Hill will fight most grapplers, or should I say when Hill will fight a grappler like Abreu, you'll see the trajectory move in opposite directions, where as the fight wears on, because Hill has got like a never-ending gas tank, he will actually start to get a read on his opponent and become more effective at defending takedowns. He'll start to be able to dig those underhooks earlier, see those entries coming earlier, and clear his legs a little bit earlier, whereas his opponent, as the fight goes on, a guy like Abreu will start to slow down, so his entries become a little bit more telegraphed, his takedowns become a little bit sloppier, he doesn't have as much drive on his entries, that kind of thing. So it's one of those things where early in the fight, Hill might be easy to take down, but later in the fight, he's going to be very difficult to take down. And one of the reasons why that happens is because Hill actually does a really good job of working his way back up to his feet. One of the reasons is because he's so big. It's very, very difficult to hold a big man like Jamal Hill down. And what you see is as soon as this guy hits the ground, he's immediately trying to create space for himself off the bottom, clear his legs, and pop back up to his feet. And that is a huge issue for a guy like Klidson Abreu, because Klidson Abreu doesn't shoot many takedowns per fight. You'll only see Abreu shoot 2 or 3 takedowns per fight. And this is because he doesn't have the gas tank to grapple hard for 15 hard minutes. So as a result of that, he has to pace himself and pick his spots to go for takedowns. The major downside of this is, if Abreu is only shooting a low volume of takedowns, well, if he shoots takedowns on Hill and Hill pops back up very quickly, Abreu commits all this energy and doesn't achieve a lot. Another problem with this style of fighting from Abreu is, if we are seeing Hill quickly pop back up to his feet when he gets taken down, Hill is probably going to be putting on a striking clinic and causing Abreu big problems standing. Now, that is a big problem for Abreu, because that might lead Abreu to shooting more takedowns than he usually would, which could be bad, because I'm guessing he doesn't have the gas tank to do that. So the point I'm trying to make is, this is a really good fight for Hill, because if Abreu fights like he usually does, and he only shoots 2 or 3 takedowns per fight, well, he's unlikely to be able to hold Abreu down, Hill down for very long off those takedowns, so they're probably not going to be enough for him to win the fight. If Abreu comes into this fight with a more grappling heavy game plan, uses more takedowns, well, then that's probably just going to accelerate the rate at which he slows down, because he's not going to be able to hold Hill down. So whatever strategy Abreu comes into here, this actually becomes a pretty difficult fight for him. I do just want to show you a few clips of both guys to try and illustrate the point I've just made. But bear in mind, the footage of both these guys is like 18 months, 2 years old, and both of them have improved a lot since then. Hill has improved tremendously, and Klidson Abreu within this time has moved from Evoluco Muay Thai to American Top Team, so he's also making big improvements from fight to fight. So this footage is very much outdated, but it will somewhat give you a glimpse at the points that I am trying to make. Alright, so the first point that I want to make is that Hill is not entirely lost on the ground. If you look at his fight against Alexander Popek from the Contender Series, you can see that Hill actually won this fight from mount with elbows. And if we look in this first round here, I do believe Hill gets dropped or something crazy happens. No, he actually drops his opponent with a nice short hook there. But on the ground, you see that he has very, very nice ground and pound and a decent top game. If we look here, Hill does a really good job of using those long limbs to inflict major, major, major damage from top position. If we just scroll a bit further along, Hill is just very, very good at basically inflicting big damage from top position, very aggressive from top position, and because he's a big, strong, 6'4" athletic dude with that 79-inch reach, he could also generate a lot of power from top position. So, people are expecting this guy to be completely out of his depth on the ground, and I wouldn't be so sure. Because if we go to this fight between Klidson Abreu and some other geezer, we can see that his takedown defense is actually pretty bad. You'll see him get taken down quite easily there. And this is obviously because Abreu is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guy, right? Abreu wants to be on his back. But the concerning thing is about Abreu, he actually looks very, very weak off his back. He goes with a closed guard here, not very, very offensive off his back. And a guy like Jamal Hill could probably get into top position, rack up quite a lot of control time, hammering him with hard ground and pound from top position. And because Abreu has got that base in BJJ, probably not going to make much of an effort to get back up to his feet, not going to be that dangerous off his back, which is a big issue, because obviously 9 times out of 10, if you're on your back in MMA, you're going to be losing that grappling exchange in the eyes of the judges. And we can scroll through and just see that Abreu accepts being on the bottom for quite a long period of time here in this round. You can see that he pretty much accepts being on the bottom for pretty much the remainder of the round, which is a huge red flag. Makes no effort really to get back up to his feet. So yeah, Jamal gets into top position. He's going to be just fine. Abreu not particularly dangerous off his back. The only thing that I do worry about with Jamal Hill is when you look at him in positions like, if we go to positions like this, so he finds himself on the ground, in just a second, and the one thing that I worry about with Hill is that we don't know a lot about his submission defense. He's very, very good at popping back up to his feet when he gets taken down, and this fight doesn't really show it as much as his last fight against Darko Stosic, but like I say, he's improved a lot since then. But it's in these positions that bother me a little bit, because where earlier on in the breakdown we were talking about Hill having good takedown offense technique but being a little bit slow to use it, he's also a little bit slow to defend submissions, and you see that throughout his fights. You know, a little bit slow to react to fighting the choke, a little bit slow to react to, you know, defending leg lock attempts, and that's fine, you know, when you're fighting guys, you know, low-level guys on the regional circuit. When you're fighting high-level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioners like Klidson and Abreu, they only need a fraction of a second to obviously put you in a really bad position on the ground and submit you. So this fight kind of shows it. I mean, I don't want to spend too long on this, otherwise this video is going to end up being, you know, super, super long. But just trust me, boys, I've done my homework on this, and yeah, I'm not entirely confident in Jamal Hill's submission defense, the point I'm trying to make. But everyone is talking like, you know, if this fight goes to the ground, Jamal Hill is going to be absolutely doomed, and I'm not convinced he is, just because when we look at Klidson Abreu's past fights, he doesn't really look like he's got a very heavy top game to me. Like we said, Hill does a great job of creating space for himself on the bottom to pop back up to his feet when he does get taken down, and what we see here from Klidson Abreu is that when he is in top position, he actually gives his opponent a lot of space to work back up to their feet, which means that if he does get a takedown on Hill, it's going to probably be it's going to be quite unlikely Abreu's able to hold him down. So this is his fight from M1 Challenge against Viagizin, and you are very, very soon, in a few moments, going to see the type of top control Abreu has got, and it is a little bit underwhelming. So he hits a nice takedown here, I believe. Hits a trip or a throw or something any second now. Any seconds are coming up. Have I got to? This video file is really long, boys, so I'm not going to try and skip through it, or I'll miss the point in the video I'm waiting for. So we'll just let this roll. We'll let it roll until they're on the ground, and then you guys can see exactly what I'm talking about. So this fight does go to the ground in a second, boys. I'm really sorry that I can't skip through. This Youku video player is very dodgy. Shall I gamble and try and skip through? It would be a bad idea, right? It would be quite a bad idea. Abreu committing hard to the takedown here. He finally gets it, and here we see him in top position. So we get to see a little bit of Abreu's top game here. But as you see, he just gives his opponent a lot of space to pop back up. So he works really hard to get that takedown. I mean, he's been trying to get that takedown for 2 minutes. And when he finally has committed all that energy to getting the takedown, he just lets his opponent pop right back up. And it is very difficult to hold Jamal Hill down. So this indicates bad fight IQ to me from Klidson Abreu. And what you'll also see here, you know, we're only... You know, this is the first round. We're only 2.5 minutes into this fight, and already you are starting to see Abreu slow down, taking some big deep breaths. His hand speed is very slow, you know, laboured movement. Just already looking like he's starting to slow down. We get to see a little bit more of his top game here. Hits a nice double leg takedown there on his opponent. His opponent goes with a closed guard here off his back. But again, we see Abreu kind of posture up here to land some ground and pound. There's a lot of space in there for his opponent, and look what happens once again. His opponent works his way back up to his feet. So what you're seeing here is Abreu has worked very hard to get 2 takedowns and let his opponent very, very cheaply get back up to his feet, only to then try and take him down again, which makes absolutely no sense. Why are you committing all this energy to take your opponent down, to then let them back up, to then try and take them down again? You may as well just maintain top position off the first takedown so you don't use up as much energy. So really bad fight IQ here from Abreu, and he's also showing that when he is on the ground, gives his opponent a lot of space to pop back up to their feet, which is a big mistake against Jamal Hill, who's difficult to hold down anyway. So I think I've made my point on this fight. The reason why I don't see these takedowns being enough to win this fight for Abreu is just because Hill is so dangerous standing. He does so much damage standing that I just don't think these bullshit kind of takedowns are going to be enough to negate the good work that Hill is likely to do standing up. We need to move on from this fight. We've spent way too long on it as it is. Hopefully I have made my point. I am very, very tempted to bet Jamal Hill in this fight. I haven't yet. And the reason why I haven't yet at around even money is simply because we don't really know anything about his submission defense. In his past fights against like William Vincent, didn't look particularly reassuring, didn't look particularly good. So at even money, you know, fighting a high-level grappler like Abreu, it is very, very risky. But if his odds continue to improve up until around even money, I will definitely pull the trigger on him, because I already think that he's not a bad bet at the current odds. Definitely would not bet Klidson Abreu here. It is very surprising to me to see so many people online betting Abreu, considering what I've personally found in my fight research. I would not feel at all good about betting Abreu this weekend. We now move into the next fight that I want to talk about, which is one of the worst fights on the entire card for betting, to be fair. It is going to be Antonina Shevchenko versus Katlyn Chookagian, and a lot of people have opinions on how they see this fight going. You know, I see two very, very strong camps of people on this fight, where, you know, the groups of people feel very, very passionate either way, that either Shevchenko is going to win or Chookagian is going to win. But I honestly feel that there are no strong positions on this fight. There is no way to feel confident either girl. There is nothing you can show me from either girl that would make me feel confident in either of them. And I really feel like this is going to be one of those fights that is going to end in a split decision. And on Sunday morning, we're all going to be arguing about, you know, who won this fight, calling it a robbery, because it'll be so tight that people will just be scoring it in all kinds of different ways. The fact is, it's just impossible to predict how a fight like this is going to play out. I could tell you the strengths and weaknesses of both girls, potential paths to victory for both girls, but it doesn't mean they're actually going to be able to go out there and successfully implement those game plans. So if we look at the current odds at the moment, Shevchenko's odds currently around about an average of 1.75, which is minus 133 for an implied probability of 57%. So the bet on Shevchenko here, got to give her a better than 57% chance of winning. And if we look at the odds on Chookagian, she is currently around about an average of 2.15, which is plus 115 for an implied probability of 47%. And like I say, this one's got a split decision written all over it, which is why you do not want to be betting these you know, either of these girls at around about even money. Yes, you might get a little bit of mathematical value on Chookagian, but, you know, unless you're placing a super high volume of MMA bets, it might take you years and years and years to realize any kind of meaningful profit on bets like this, where you're putting yourself in a putting your money in a marginal position. So for me, it's just pointless. It's very high risk, and lost money through compound interested growth and variance will absolutely kill you placing bets like this, even if you are getting you know, a tiny little bit of value. So if you're thinking of betting this fight, I would definitely urge you not to. There are no strong positions on this matchup. So there's so many layers to this matchup. Where do we start? Okay, so both girls are primarily strikers, but neither girl has really got any power in their hands at all. Neither girl possesses the power to hurt the other one. There's a very, very high probability that this fight is going to go the distance. Neither girl is very good defensively either, and neither girl is particularly accurate. A high number of their punches fall short, miss their target, and like I say, they're very, very bad defensively. Out of the two, Chookagian is probably worse defensively, not necessarily because she's easier to hit, but because she doesn't react well when hit, in the sense that, both girls are equally bad defensively, but when Chookagian gets hit, her head gets snapped back very, very easily, and even when she's not caught with a particularly hard power shot, the shot that lands looks like it landed with way more impact than it did, just by the way that she reacts to it, which in a close fight doesn't look good in the eyes of the judges. Shevchenko bad defensively, but takes shots a lot better. Both girls are counter strikers. Shevchenko more likely to lead the dance. Chookagian never really likes to lead the dance. Chookagian likes to just circle away from her opponent on the outside and chip away at them. But Chookagian does have a really, really short reach. So she only has a 66-inch reach, which is very, very short for someone that's 5'9". So many of her punches fall short. She's very, very inaccurate with her strikes. So if you're asking me about this fight from a betting perspective, I do lean Shevchenko, and I do believe Shevchenko is the rightful favourite, because even though I give Chookagian a slight advantage striking, because I think her footwork might give Shevchenko some problems, the reason why I lean towards Shevchenko in this fight is because Katlyn Chookagian truly has some of the worst takedown defense in the division. A strong gust of wind is enough to take her down. Her takedown offense is really, 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 really bad, guys. And while Shevchenko is primarily a striker, she has mixed it up with her has gone to her grappling in her last 3 fights. The irony of this is that Chookagian is actually the more skilled grappler from a technical point of view. I believe Katlyn Chookagian is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt and Lorenzo Gracie. So with Antonina Shevchenko having a really low-level ground game, if the fight does go to the ground, Shevchenko will be at some risk of being submitted. However, because Chookagian does have that base in BJJ, just like with Louis Smolka, just like with Klidson Abreu, she is way too happy to fight off her back, and she spends way too long off her back, throwing up long shot submissions. Are very, very difficult to hit. Doesn't really try hard enough to work her way back up to her feet. If you take Chookagian down, you can often rack up 2-3 minutes of top control time easily. Like we said on the last fight, 9 times out of 10, the fighter in top position is the one winning the fight in the eyes of the judges. So even though Chookagian's ground game is a higher level than Shevchenko, Shevchenko's likely to be the girl on top if the fight does go to the ground, which does favour Shevchenko in terms of grappling. So the reason why I like Shevchenko in this fight is because one of the issues that both these girls have is because they're not particularly accurate with their strikes, because they don't hit particularly hard. Both girls really struggle to put their stamp on rounds, which means that the rounds, their fights always end up being kind of close and competitive if they stay standing. The reason why I like Shevchenko here is because the easiest way to steal rounds in a competitive round is obviously through takedowns. So the way I look at this fight is, if both girls are going to be very, very competitive standing, it's very, very difficult to kind of give either girl the edge when it comes to striking. If the judges are going to find it quite tight to score the rounds if they stay standing, the one thing that could swing the judges heavily in favour of either girl would be a big moment in the round. And for me, Chookagian doesn't bring anything to the table, which really puts that stamp on her round. She's very, very one-paced, whereas Shevchenko can use takedowns to steal rounds and put a stamp on rounds. It's the reason why I lean towards Shevchenko, but we can't guarantee Shevchenko is going to come into the fight with a grappling heavy game plan, and even if she does, she's a low level grappler, so she might get herself into trouble against Chookagian. What is interesting, however, is that Chookagian has obviously just fought Antonina's sister. She's fought Valentina Shevchenko, and Valentina actually used grappling to win this fight, right? She finished Chookagian with ground and pound from the crucifix position. So Antonina Shevchenko and Valentina Shevchenko, they train together every day, and we have already seen that camp use a grappling heavy game plan to defeat Chookagian, so it wouldn't surprise me at all if Antonina came in with another grappling heavy game plan to try and use her wrestling to be the difference here. But I wouldn't bet on it. This one's an easy pass for me. I definitely lean Shevchenko, but not with any amount of confidence. It's a terrible fight for betting. Please don't bet it. Pass all day long. Jesus, this is turning into a long one. Alright, boys, we'll now get into the next fight that I want to talk about, which is going to be Hannah Cifers. I made a huge mistake. I made a huge mistake, boys. I said all the way through the video that I was going to talk about what impact the cage size could have on each fight, and I've completely forgotten to do it for the last few matchups. Okay, so it is unlikely to affect the fight at all between Elliott and Royval. It is likely to affect the fight between Hill and Abreu. A small cage... God, I spent a long time talking about this one, and I'm back on it. I could talk about it. This is why my live streams, when we do these fight research sessions, are long, boys. I go into a lot of depth. I leave no stone unturned. No stone unturned, which is why when people criticize my bets or my style of gambling, I have to tell them to go fuck themselves, because I literally leave no stone unturned. So, in terms of the small cage, it's very bad for Abreu, because when Abreu shoots in for a takedown, Hill won't have to actually move back that far to be able to get his back tight to the cage, to be able to use the cage as a tool to defend the takedown. And Hill does a really good job of using the cage to defend the takedown. So this fight becomes much more difficult for Abreu in a small cage. There, I said it. In terms of this fight is better for Shevchenko in a small cage, because Chookagian likes to circle away from her opponent, use the space of the big cage to stay on the outside, and for the same reasons that a small cage makes life difficult for a counter-striker like Chris Gutierrez, also makes it a more difficult fight for Chookagian. She doesn't have as much space to circle into. It'll be easier for Shevchenko to cut the cage off. And the reason why I'm very sorry I forgot to mention that, boys, but I do want to talk about cage size and how it impacts Mackenzie Dern versus Hannah Cifers, which is why I kind of remembered that. How forgetful of me. Anyway, boys, we get back into the breakdowns. We're going to be going into the next fight now between Mackenzie Dern and Hannah Cifers. Miss Dern, the biggest favourite on the card. She is currently around about an average of 1.25, which is going to be minus 400 for an implied probability of 80%. So if you want to bet on Dern, got to give her a better than 80% chance of winning. And the odds on Cifers currently around about an average of 4.30, which is going to be plus 330 for an implied probability of 23%. So if you want to bet Miss Cifers, you have to give her a better than 23% chance of winning. So the small cage will have a big impact on this fight, or probably won't have a big impact on this fight, but it does make the fight a little bit easier for Cifers, although probably won't change the outcome, because this is a very, very difficult stylistic matchup for Hannah Cifers. So obviously this is a classic striker versus grappler matchup, with Mackenzie Dern being a world-class Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner and one of the highest level BJJ practitioners in the women's strawweight division. And that is bad news for Hannah Cifers, who is a very, very, very low level on the ground. Very low level on the ground indeed, to the point where if Mackenzie Dern lands just one takedown in this 15-minute fight, that is probably all she's going to be able to... That's probably all she's going to need to be able to get a finish here. We've seen how bad Cifers is on the ground. So this is a very difficult fight for Hannah Cifers, because she's got a really square striking stance where she throws quite short punches, doesn't really have any power in her hands. And Mackenzie Dern, while Dern is bad defensively, she's quite green when it comes to striking. Dern is incredibly tough, and Dern doesn't mind eating a shot to get inside and work for a takedown. And Cifers simply does not have the power in her hands to deter Dern from coming forward. Dern is very, very aggressive in pursuing that takedown. One of the things I also like about Dern is that she's incredibly persistent. She's not like a Klidson Abreu that's only going to shoot 2 or 3 takedowns per fight. Dern has the gas tank, the toughness, the energy to spam takedowns for 15 minutes. And that makes life difficult for Cifers, because like the old saying goes, the more you shoot, the more you score. And the more Dern tries to take Cifers down, the higher the probability that she actually at some point does successfully complete a takedown and get Cifers to the ground. Now, Dern's offensive wrestling is not great. Hannah Cifers' takedown defense isn't great, but it's not bad either. Cifers actually does a really good job defending takedowns against the cage, and Dern does work for takedowns a lot of the time against the cage, which means Dern might not find it easy to get this fight to the ground, and that is one of the reasons why the cage size does have a big impact on this fight, because like we said with Abreu and Jamal Hill, when Dern shoots in, Cifers isn't going to have to move back very far to get her back tight to the cage to start using the cage as a tool to gain her balance and defend that takedown. So small cage does make it easier for Hannah Cifers to keep this fight standing. However, Dern does tenaciously pursue those takedowns, and the probability of Dern hitting one takedown in 15 minutes is really, really high, and the skill gap on the ground is so vast that Cifers is going to get gonna probably be submitted, dominated, 10-8'd on the round pretty fucking easily if Dern just hits one takedown. So that's pretty much this fight in a nutshell. I don't want to spend too much time on this fight. Like I say, because Cifers can't do anything standing to really hurt Dern. She can't survive if the fight goes to the ground. I don't see enough from Cifers to take a small gamble on it as a high risk bet at a big underdog odds, but I'm not betting Dern as a big favourite either, because she's taking the fight on short notice. Cifers has pretty good takedown offense against the cage, and I just don't feel like betting on a big favourite like Dern, to be honest with you. Like I say, live betting's going great for me, pre-fight betting's going great for me, investing's going great for me, trading's going great for me. I like money. I don't feel like betting on either of these girls. So I will now go into breaking down the next fight, which is going to be Billy Quarantillo against Spike Carlyle. And this is mental, because I've seen some people come into my chat room this week and announce that they think Spike Carlyle is a great bet this weekend, which is very, very interesting to me, because there is absolutely no footage, or barely any footage, available on Spike Carlyle online. Certainly less than 10 minutes. So how these people are coming up with their opinion that Carlyle is a good bet, I will never know. But anyway, we move on. What I can do is share with you the information that I've discovered about both these guys. You can make a decision on this one yourself. So if we take a look at the odds, we currently see Billy Quarantillo, current average odds of about 1.75, which is minus 133 for an implied probability of 57%. And the odds on Spike Carlyle currently around about an average of 2.10, which is plus 110 for an implied probability of 48%. And what I will do is just play this fight here for you so that you can kind of see what Spike Carlyle is bringing to the table in his fight from December 2019 against Matthew Colquhoun. And this fight, I mean, there are a few more, minutes of footage available on Carlyle, but this is probably the best piece of footage we've got available to us to try and form an opinion on what Spike Carlyle will bring to the table. So he looks like a wrestler, with how he's aggressively pursuing this takedown on Colquhoun, which is interesting because Billy Quarantillo he does have pretty bad takedown defense, to be fair to Billy. But I think one of the reasons why Billy does have bad takedown defense is that, in a similar way to Louis Smolka, he's very much got that Diaz style of fighting where he doesn't care about being taken down, because Quarantillo's grappling and BJJ is at such a decent level that he's like, go ahead, take me down, I don't give a fuck, because I'm confident that when we hit the ground, I'm going to be able to cause you big problems there. And Quarantillo, just a bit of a nightmare everywhere, really. Just a cardio machine. Never stops working, never stops pushing the pace. He's constantly attacking on the ground and constantly attacking standing. Now, the one knock I've got on Quarantillo's ground game is because he is so offensive on the ground. He's a little bit like Tim Elliott in the sense that because he is constantly trying to submit his opponent and inflict damage on them on the ground, he does have a habit of giving up position a lot on the ground, which isn't good against strong wrestlers, but I'm not sure if Carlyle is going to be the type of guy to make him pay for that. Now, we don't really have much information on Carlyle, but what you will see here is this is only 2 minutes into this fight, and already he is looking flat-footed, taking big deep breaths, hands down by his side, looking very, very sloppy. So, I don't know if Carlyle's got bad cardio, but based on this fight, it looks like he does. I'm not willing to make a betting decision based on that because I don't want to judge a guy's gas tank based on one fight. But as we can see, this is only 2 minutes in, and Carlyle looks pretty gassed here, which is bad news against a guy like Billy Quarantillo, because Quarantillo is an absolute cardio machine, and he never stops pushing the pace no matter whether the fight is standing up or on the ground. This guy is relentless, very much has that Diaz style of fighting where standing up, he's throwing a high volume of strikes. He's bad defensively standing, which is a bit of an issue because Carlyle just has crazy power. Seems to be one of these guys with abnormal power like a Nico Price. But standing up, Quarantillo comes forward, applies relentless pressure, throws a super high volume of strikes, does a great job of mixing things up, working the body, going to the head. And Quarantillo's one of these guys, man. He's just a hurricane. He's going to constantly come after you. No break, just relentless. Constantly attacking on the ground, constantly attacking standing. And that style of fighting could be kryptonite for a guy like Spike Carlyle if he does have bad cardio, because Quarantillo's likely to set such a high pace Carlyle won't be able to keep up with him. But like I say, I'm not willing to make a betting decision on that because we don't know a lot about Carlyle, and even though he looks gassed here, you know, I'm not going to write off his gas tank just for one fight, and all the other fights that we've got footage available of him on are inconclusive. We don't really know a lot about his cardio based on those fights, so I definitely lean towards Quarantillo based on what I've seen, but that's mainly because Carlyle doesn't look good here, and this is pretty much the only fight that we've really got to assess him on. You know, even here, we already see Carl Cahoon shutting down his wrestling, and Carlyle looking pretty flat, but then he hits a crazy spinning elbow out of absolutely nowhere. Just before we wrap up this breakdown on this fight, I'll just show you a little bit of Quarantillo's style. So he does have very bad striking defense, but just like, oh no, what is going on here? Sorry, boys. Let's refresh this. Here we go. So you'll just see a little clip of Quarantillo striking, grappling. Like I say, very much a Diaz style of fighting. Bad defensively, you know, bad takedown defense, bad striking defense, but he's so tough, fights at such a high pace, has such a good gas tank that he just pushes a crazy pace and tries to break his opponent in any area that the fight takes place. And that's basically Billy Quarantillo. Let me take another drink, boys, before we get into the next fight. How many fights do we have left to go? Oh, only 2 more. That's not so bad. 2 more to go, and then I can go and jump into this UFC 250 fight research, boys. Don't forget to sign up to my website if you want to get involved in that. Let's move on, boys. Let's move on. You could go watch that fight yourself to reaffirm everything I've told you about this matchup. So, 2 fights left to go. No bets from me on this card, but hopefully you find this information useful anyway. If you are finding this information, these videos take a lot of work. I don't get a lot out of them. Definitely don't get a lot out of them, so please, the least you could do if you enjoy these videos every week, boys, is hitting that like button and subscribe it if you haven't already. It will help the channel grow. I would really appreciate it. Okay, we now get into the co-main event. Blagoy Ivanov against Augusto Sakai. And out of all the fights on this card, I can tell you right now that this is just a fight where I simply do not have a lean on this matchup at all. I have no idea how this goes. I just could not care about it any less from a betting perspective. I think it's just, from a betting point of view, it's impossible to bet. If we look at the odds, both guys currently around about even money at the moment at 1.91, which is minus 110 for an implied probability of 52%. I have no idea who wins this fight. Just like with Antonina Shevchenko and Caitlin Chookagian, I would compel you, I would urge you not to bet this fight. I don't care what you think you know about this fight, what you think you've seen in research. I promise you, boys, there is no strong position on this fight. Do not put your money in danger. At even money, this is a pass all day long on these two boys here. So, I've seen a few people justify bets on Blagoy Ivanov this week on the basis that they think Ivanov's going to be able to use his wrestling or something to win this fight. I don't see that at all. I don't think there's really any chance Ivanov is able to take Sakai down. And even if he does take Sakai down, he doesn't have a heavy top game because he's very undersized for the division at 5'11" with a 73-inch reach. So he's not going to be able to hold Sakai down. So I do not see this being, I do not see this being a path to victory at all for Ivanov. This is very, very, very likely to be a stand-up fight. And both these guys like to spend a lot of time battling for position in the clinch as well. So good chance we see quite a lot of clinch work from both these boys in this fight. And yeah, it should say standing. So if the fight stays in the clinch, you're going to see both guys, battling, jockeying for position. I mean, out of the two, Ivanov, likes to have his back on the cage a little bit more, which often means he's losing that position. I don't even know. He shouldn't be. It should be a 50-50 position under the new scoring criteria. But what I'm trying to say is both guys like to fight in the clinch. Sakai's a little bit busier in the clinch against the cage. But I mean, if you're trying to evaluate a fight and how it might be for betting based on which fight is going to be more effective, hugging it out in the clinch, you probably should just pass on that fight anyway. So I do see this fight being a stand-up fight. Both guys are kind of like the opposite of each other. Ivanov is an okay offensive boxer and terrible defensively. Sakai is an okay defensive boxer but terrible offensively. If you're asking me how I feel about this fight, I probably slightly lean towards Sakai just because he's bigger, he hits harder, and Ivanov has a habit. I mean, Ivanov is a bit of a decision machine. Ivanov has never been knocked out, but there's a first time for everything. And he does get rocked, dropped, knocked out, wobbled, and dinged a lot. So Ivanov is there to be hit. So I think it's only a matter of time before we see this guy get knocked out. Sakai, not particularly dangerous, so he's probably not going to be the first one to do it, but you never know, man. It could happen. He knocked out Marcin Tybura. He knocked out Chase Sherman. You never know. You never know. I don't really know what else to say about this fight, boys. It's a really, really bad one for betting. Both of them are quite passive. Both of them struggle to put their stamp on rounds. Sakai in particular throws a really low volume of strikes. And I think this is likely to be another one of those fights that goes the distance. And on Sunday, we're all arguing again as to how this fight should have been scored and saying it was a robbery in some way. This got split decision written all over it. Alright, boys, we now go into the main event of the evening. It is Tyron Woodley against Gilbert Durinho Burns. And when I began to research this event, this was the first fight that I researched because when I saw Gilbert Burns as an underdog, I thought he might have been a great bet. Gilbert Burns has been looking fucking fantastic lately. Gilbert Burns has been making big improvements from fight to fight. So I was thinking like Burns might have been a really, really good bet here. You could already guess what I'm about to say. Unfortunately, after researching it, I could tell you he definitely isn't, and there is no fucking way I would bet Gilbert Burns at these odds. If we look at his current odds, currently around about an average of 2.55, which is plus 155 for an implied probability of 39%. And if we take a look at Tyron Woodley, current average odds of about 1.55, which is minus 182 for an implied probability of 65%. So this was one of those fights where before I researched it, I strongly leant towards Burns and I thought he might be a great bet here. But after researching it, I am on the Woodley train now. I definitely lean super heavy towards Woodley. And Woodley is one of 3 bets that I am strongly considering on this card. I'm considering a bet on Woodley, Tim Elliott, and Jamal Hill for the reasons that I've explained in this video, but haven't pulled the trigger on any of them yet. I'm waiting to see how the odds move, how the weigh-ins go, all that kind of good stuff. So why do I lean Woodley? Well, both these guys are primarily grapplers. Gilbert Burns has a base in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and Tyron Woodley is obviously a wrestler. But I anticipate this to be a stand-up fight because Tyron Woodley's basically impossible to take down and even harder to hold down. And Gilbert Burns doesn't really have the offensive wrestling to take him down. You know, I've just said that Woodley is impossible to take down, and you're saying, well, hang on a minute. Usman did a pretty good job of taking him down in his last fight, but Kamaru Usman is a fucking phenom. He is probably the best grappler in MMA at the moment, up there with Khabib. So, you know, Gilbert Burns isn't going to be able to do to Tyron Woodley what Kamaru Usman did. So I do expect this to be a stand-up fight because Woodley doesn't really use his wrestling because he needs to pace himself and conserve energy. He doesn't have the gas tank to grapple hard for 25 minutes, so he's unlikely to want to go to the ground with a guy like Gilbert Burns, who's very tricky on the ground, very offensive, and likely to make Tyron work very hard. So we've got two grapplers here, but this is, I would say, almost guaranteed to be a stand-up fight. So in a stand-up fight, Tyron Woodley has quite a big advantage simply because Gilbert Burns has very, very bad striking defense. So if you go back and watch any of Gilbert Burns' fights, the fight against Gunnar Nelson's a good one to watch. The fight against Dan Hooker is an even better one to watch. You'll actually see that when Gilbert Burns comes forward and looks to attack his opponent, he kind of ducks his head off in weird ways. He kind of flinches, kind of leaves his chin up and exposed. He kind of flails his arms in weird ways. And the thing with Woodley is he keeps that right hand cocked, and he has excellent timing, speed, power, and precision. He is ruthlessly accurate with that power right hand, and he's waiting for you to make one mistake, and as soon as he sees that one mistake, that one opening, he's looking to land that nuclear missile of a right hand and knock you out. And I do think there is a very, 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 very high probability, there's a very good chance Woodley knocks Gilbert Burns out in this fight. As much it hurts me to say that, because I love Gilbert Burns, man. He is a great fighter, but he's very bad defensively, man. He's wide open to being knocked out, and now he's fighting one of the biggest knockout artists in the welterweight division. So what else do we have to say about that? It's pretty much that's pretty much it. Obviously, the problem with Woodley is he throws a really low volume of strikes. He is very much a single shot fighter. He is hoping that his power in his right hand scares you so much that when you feel it, it deters you from continuing to come forward. So the way you beat Woodley is overloading him with pressure. But the problem is, in order to overload a guy like Woodley with pressure, you have to put yourself in danger of being caught by that right hand, and that's why so many guys do struggle against him, because they are reluctant to come inside and pressure him for fear of being KO dead, basically. Like, the style that would beat Tyron Woodley's is like a Nate Diaz, like a Justin Gaethje, like a Tony Ferguson high pressure style. The problem is when you use that style, you're very hittable, and not many people can take a shot off Woodley. The problem with that style is, though, you know, like Chael Sonnen once said, when you try and win a fight by knockout, you often end up losing a decision. And because Woodley only throws a really low volume of strikes, if he doesn't knock you out, you're always going to be sweating a judge's decision, right? Because he doesn't actually land that much. Whether or not Gilbert Burns can get busy and land on Woodley without taking major damage and getting knocked out, I'm not so sure. Because every time Burns comes forward and attacks Woodley, he's going to be at significant risk of being on the wrong end of one of those Woodley-style blitzes and getting knocked down. One of the things about Woodley as well, he's very much like a Henry Cejudo, in the sense that if he does knock you down and hurt you, he doesn't let you off the hook. He absolutely goes for the kill, and it's very, very difficult to recover when he does have you hurt, because he's vicious with ground and pound, and he's got major power, right, to land follow-up shots to put you away. So on that note, you're probably asking me, why I am not going to be betting Mr. Woodley. Well, I might still bet Mr. Woodley. I do think this is a good stylistic matchup for him, but there are some red flags here. So don't forget that Woodley is a very big favourite. Currently around about average odds of 1.55, which is minus 182 for an implied probability of 65%. I definitely would not bet Burns here. I cannot emphasise that enough. But there are red flags with Woodley that make me not love him at these odds. I always use the example of, when I'm placing bets, I always like to feel like I get a good deal. And, there's 3 different types of bets on the table, right? I always describe betting as going into a clothing store and looking at clothes that are on sale. And sometimes you'll go into a clothing store and there'll be a really nice sweater. And you go up to the sweater, you're like, I love that sweater. But you look at the price tag, it's like a Gucci sweater. It's fucking $2,000. And you're like, do you know what? I love the sweater, but that's a terrible price. Do you know what I mean? I'm not paying that. What an absolute rip-off. You put the sweater back on the rail, you go look for something else. Then, you're in the store, you see another sweater. You absolutely love this sweater. You go up to it, and you take a look at it, and you're like, I like this sweater. You look at the price tag. It's quite expensive. Like, it's not a good price. You feel it's a little bit too expensive. It's not crazy. It's not an outlandish price like the Gucci sweater, but it's still a little bit steep. Do you know what I mean? It's a little bit more than you wanted to pay. So you're like, do you know what? I don't think I'm getting good value on that sweater. I'm going to put that sweater back on the rail. I'm going to look something else. And then across the store, on the rail across the other side of the store, you see the best fucking sweater you have seen all day. It kicks the shit out of the Gucci sweater and the other sweater that you just put back on the rail. This is the best one you've seen. And you walk over to it, you look at the price tag, and it's cheaper than the other two. It is amazingly priced. The fabric feels great. The print feels amazing. The cut is superb. It fits tremendously well. You know you're getting a good deal. That is a very fair price for that sweater. You take it to the cash register, you purchase that sweater, you wear it out with your wife, your girlfriend, you take her out for a meal in this sweater, she pays you compliments, your friends say how sharp this sweater looks, where did you get it? You got yourself a good deal. When it comes to betting, those are the bets you want to hunt for, and they're the only ones you want to place. They are the only ones you want to place. Remember that. Remember that. It's very, very important. Always look like you're getting a good deal. When you look at bets like Tyron Woodley, when you look at bets like Tim Elliott, and when you look at bets like Jamal Hill, they should win. They should win. But when you look at the current odds, you're paying the fair price. You don't want to be paying the fair price. You want to get a good deal. You want to get a really good deal. You want to get a bargain. That's how you make long-term money gambling, where you're getting a huge margin over the bookies and a great risk to reward ratio. So when you do hit periods of extreme variance and bad luck and, things happen in fights that you couldn't have predicted, like your fighter doesn't show up and perform, or they get a point deduction, or the judges rob you, it doesn't matter, because over the long term, you're only placing bets where you're getting a great margin, a great deal anyway. That's my perspective. There's no right or wrong in gambling. This is the way I do things, and I've made a lot of money doing things that way over the years. So you can take my opinion, you do things your own way. But that's why I'm telling you, I don't have any bets on this card, because that's how I'm currently seeing things. I lean very heavily towards Woodley, very heavily towards Elliott, and very heavily towards Jamal Hill. But they're not cheap enough for me. I need a better deal. I'm hoping I can pick them up in the sale when they knock another 20% off the price. Alright? And if they don't knock another 20% off the right price, I'll wait. I won't buy the goddamn sweater. I got plenty of other sweaters at home. And you know what, boys? There's going to be a lot of sales coming up soon, because we have got an event every single weekend over the next 5 weeks at least. At least. Those are just the events announced. So there are plenty of sales coming up. Save your money for those sales where you might find incredible sweaters and incredible deals on all those sales coming up. You get me, boys? That's the best way I can think of explaining it. So don't sell yourself short forcing bullshit bets. If you love money, be fucking smart. And I love money, boys. I love money. So, why am I not betting on Tyron Woodley? Let's get to the red flags. Well, the first red flag is that he's 38 years old. And this is a big problem. It's a big problem because of Tyron Woodley's fighting style. So, if you look at let's just call out some older fighters. Glover Teixeira, Dan Henderson, Randy Couture. If you look at the styles of fighters who are older, like the three guys we just mentioned, all those guys relied on fight IQ, toughness, technique, determination, grittiness, and just intelligence to win fights, right? Randy Couture wasn't particularly athletic. He wasn't particularly fast. Didn't really have much knockout power in his hands. Wasn't even a particularly good wrestler. But he was smart. He was tough. He had a gas tank for days. He was intelligent and he was crafty, and he would outwork you. Woodley, on the other hand, very, very much relies on speed, power, timing, reflexes, athleticism. When you reach this stage of your career, almost 40 years old, those are the first things that go. So Woodley, at the tail end of his career at 38 years old, could decline literally overnight out of nowhere. Because Father Time at this stage in your career could creep up on you very, very fast at 38 years old. Woodley already kind of hinted that this might be happening when he spoke about his loss to Kamaru Usman and said that he just didn't show up. Now, to be honest with you, I think Usman is pound for pound one of the best fighters in the world right now. And I don't think the loss was so much Woodley not showing up. I just think he wasn't good enough to beat Usman. But Woodley said it himself. He just wasn't there for that fight. He didn't feel right. He wasn't up for it. Mentally, he wasn't there. That is the first sign that Father Time is creeping up on you, right? If you're an old guy like a Glover Teixeira that relies on craftiness, toughness, superior technique, an endless gas tank, then you can compete at a high level later on in your career because you're not relying so much on things like speed, reflexes, and athleticism that tend to abandon you when you get older. So the point I'm trying to make here is Woodley's age is a big red flag because all the things that he relies on to be great could decline very, very quickly at this stage of his career. So there's a good chance he'll underperform against Gilbert Burns. What happens if he becomes like who's the best example I can think of? Probably Anderson Silva, where, Anderson Silva throughout his entire career had devastating accuracy, sharp reflexes, and he only needed to see a fraction of a second of an opening and he would pull the trigger and knock you out. Whereas later on in his career, you could see he was kind of frustrated with himself in the sense that he couldn't punish people for the openings in the same way that he could earlier on in his career. We're seeing a similar thing from Sam Alvey. You go watch Sam Alvey fight 5 years ago compared to now. He would see those openings, uncork the left hand and inflict major damage with that. Why am I holding my right hand? Major damage with that power left hand. Whereas now Alvey sees the openings, but you can see he's very frustrated with himself because he can't pull the trigger. That can happen overnight. That can happen very quickly. And if Woodley doesn't see those openings in the same way, if he's declined to the point where he can't quite capitalize anymore and land that right hand, he could really struggle here quite bad and get out volumed by Burns and lose a decision. Other red flags, obviously straight from the horse's mouth. I will just play this very short clip for you here from Mr. Woodley talking to the Schmo about the chronic injury he is currently suffering to his right hand.
Main event, you had to pull out with the hand. How's it healing? It's healing better, it just took a while, when you got arthritis, at 37 shit, it makes your hand kind of cramp, and, when you go to post and grab and grip, you want to just make sure you're 100% when you're fighting, at this point in time, coming up off a loss, man, I got to go back out there and I got to be 100%. I got to be mentally ready, physically ready, and this is my moneymaker. This is where, I knocked everybody out with, so I got to make sure the hand right.
So there we go, straight from the horse's mouth, Woodley saying that his right hand is riddled with arthritis at the moment. As you know, osteoarthritis is a chronic injury. It's not easy to make it go away. It could flare up at any time, and it is very debilitating, very painful, to the point where when Tyron Woodley appeared on the Joe Rogan podcast a couple of years ago, he said that, at times he can barely close his hand and make a fist. So you can imagine how much of an impact that might have if it flares up, causing problems in this fight. Now, for osteoarthritis, There is cutting edge stem cell treatments which can heal it, but I don't know if Woodley's had that or not. What I would also say about osteoarthritis is, if he hasn't had that cutting edge stem cell treatment, it's not like it's going to go away. It's only going to get worse. You know, osteoarthritis is caused from, you know, the cartilage and the tendons getting worn down in between your joints so that your bones start to rub. The only way to heal that is stem cell injections, which regenerates that cartilage. But that's a very new treatment that's only popped up in the last couple of years or so. I don't know if Woodley's had that. If Woodley hasn't, that arthritis will only have got worse in the last 2 years. So that's another big red flag. If his right hand is too riddled with arthritis to be able to close his fist and land that big right hand on Burns, that completely changes this fight. Because like we've just seen Woodley say in that interview, his right hand is the money maker. So if he can't use it because it's riddled with arthritis, that literally leaves him with basically no weapons to defeat Burns in this fight. So that's another red flag. Ultimately, those are the reasons why I'm going to be passing on Tyron Woodley. But that is going to be it for this video, boys. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please show some appreciation by hitting the like button below and subscribing if you haven't already. And don't forget, if you want to join me in researching UFC 250 instead of waiting for these breakdown videos to drop, head on over to my website, because I'm going to literally start researching UFC 250 straight away. As soon as this video gets uploaded to YouTube, I'm straight on my website researching UFC 250. So come check us out over there. And also, boys, don't forget, if you do want to live bet with me this weekend, my live betting service is highly profitable, and you can take advantage of it at the moment. You will absolutely love it, boys. Get involved. Try it out just the once. It only costs $50 for this weekend. You try it once, I guarantee it is going to have you hooked. You'll absolutely love it. But anyway, boys, that is going to be it for me. I will be back very soon with a video for UFC 250, probably next Wednesday, something like that. But for now, boys, take care. Have a great weekend. I hope you crush it on this event and make tons of money. Love you all, and I will see you all very soon.